Welcome, everyone. So good to have you here on a beautiful Wednesday, wherever you are in the world. And really excited to be delivering this session here around presenting to C-suite executives. Now, what's interesting is that we probably, some of you may not even know what a C-suite executive is. So just to make sure we are clear on that to begin with, I'll just mute some of those just coming into the room. Is that a C-suite is someone who might be a chief executive officer, chief marketing officer, chief information officer, maybe a chief financial officer, and the list goes on. It is broadening all the time. And the one thing I really like is that we now have chief human resources or people and culture get to have been put into that label now, which is fantastic because it means they've got a seat at the table, which they should have, always should have had. But imagine walking into a boardroom and inside that boardroom, there's the CEO, maybe a couple of other executives, they're sitting there. You have planned this amazing 30-minute presentation. You're excited to share what's happened over the last 3 months, all those wins and what is possible for the future. And as you sit down and you set up your laptop and you get ready to prepare, the CEO goes, "We've only got 10 minutes. Can you get a hurry on?" Who has had that happen to them before, whether it's C-suite or someone else, when you're all excited for a presentation and they cut the time? Pop a Y in the chat for me. Pop a Y in the chat if you've had that happen to you before. Right, all too common. It's one of those things, quite frustrating. And a lot of people get really flustered. They really struggle in those situations to get back into that zone and flow so they can deliver really, really well. What about you've delivered a great presentation, everyone seems to be leaning in, they're nodding, and you're going, great, this is going well, they're going to make the decision I want. And you finish, and they say, thank you, you walk out of the room, and days go by, and there's crickets. Or they come back and say, look, sorry, we can't right now, we've got other priorities. Write a me in the chat if that's happened to you. Right, and me in the chat if that's happened to you. Very frustrating once again. Okay, great. So we got a few there. Now, presenting to C-suite executives can be quite challenging sometimes, very intimidating for some people who may not have you may not have the rapport with them either internally, or you're presenting to C-suite that are external in other companies, and it's quite a challenge, and you have a bit of fear kicks in sometimes. You get the sweats and you rush through, or you miss things and you get frustrated because you've forgotten to say something. So I'm keen to know in the chat here, and I want to see a little bit more engagement from a few others as well, is what sort of things have you delivered to a C-suite executive before, whether it's internally or externally? What type of presentations have you done? Okay, wellness program. Okay, great. Is that delivering the program, Sashua, or is that pitching or presenting it to them to get approval for?
So it was both the pitching and the presenting.
Excellent, thank you. Priya, technical presentation. Shane Prezzo's around cybersecurity, field data strategies. I'm just going to mute there. Superannuation, pre-compulsory super days, right? So we're going to have some HR. Some of those can be quite uncomfortable discussions, preparing 360 evaluation research, people strategies. Okay, I love these. Keep them coming. Really, really, really good. So let's have a look at kind of a number of different things that you could be presenting to C-suite in regards to not as in delivering training, but as in delivering different types of presentations. So we could be doing progress reports, how we're going on a project, or maybe quarterly update. We could be presenting a new concept that you're trying to get approval for. We could also be requesting support from that CEO in regards that you might be trying to get agreement from other people in the organization or a collective of people. You could be seeking approval for taking leave. It could be seeking approval to be able to start a project or to go research something. a little bit different, or maybe even take a sabbatical. It could be a change initiative, and there's a lot of presentations will involve change, even if you don't realize it or not. Maybe you're presenting the future trends. You've done some research and you're like, okay, this is where we see our industry going. I think we need to be ready for this. Could be a partnership. You might be working with another company in partnership. Could be closing a large deal with another company, and so you need to deal with their C-suite. Could be recommendations on what we need to do in regards to a certain area of the organization or a process. Could be, you might be pitch presenting a product or service to a potential client or prospect. It could be influencing strategy inside the company, or even defining the priorities for your area and having that discussion. So lots of really, really important presentations that we have along the way. And then look, feel free to take any screenshots along the way. You will get the recording afterwards. Now, when we have opportunities to speak, we generally share one of the following things that I'm about to share in detail. But what we notice is that commonly it's not clear. So from a C-suite myself, I find some of the detail not that clear, or the call to action not very clear from people. And so when you're looking at the content you put in there, when you're dealing with C-suite, we must really focus on that must know rather than nice to know detail. So let's have a look at certain things that you might be bringing up in the detail of your presentations to a C-suite executive, whatever, whether a CEO or that kind of second level down of a chief marketing officer, etc. So detail could be, here are the top 3 results. And my encouragement too, when you're dealing with C-suite, is not to try and jam in 10 different things or 10 results. Focus on, here are the 3 key ones, and then suggest, I'm going to send you a PDF of all our results for this month, but here are the top 3 I want to focus on, and here's why. So be really, really clear. Don't bombard them with too much detail, unless, as we find out later on, they're a very detail-oriented person, and then I'll give you some strategies on that. Could be around the benefits of this new product or service, or this new initiative that you're looking at. It could be, here are the 3 facts, here are the 5 reasons, here are the 4 steps we need to take, here are the 3 concerns that I have around the proposal that's on the table. Here is our key successes. Here are our options that we could take. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. Here are our priorities, and I feel we need to prioritize in this order. And maybe here are the outcomes that we want to deliver. So these things here are really important when it comes to presenting to C-suite executives and senior leaders, having really clear around what is that detail you're going to share, and stick in a lane. Don't try and add 5 of these things here, or even 2. Try and sit in 1 if you possibly can, so you don't confuse the listener, because less is more when it comes to working with key decision makers. Unless they want extra information, then you share that separately. But I want to know from you now, like we've had a bit of interaction in the chat. Let's have a little bit more here. I would like to know from you, what are some of the concerns, challenges, fears that you may face when you're going to present to someone at a C-suite level? What are some of those things that you face? Is it that you don't know enough, that you may not have the facts? What is it that you fear? Or is it even just you hate presenting and you struggle with presenting and you feel really nervous? What is that? Pop it in the chat. Swati, new performance review framework culture is great. Thanks for sharing those from that earlier question as well. And welcome, Arniva. Dan, credibility. Okay. Now, Dan, actually for you, because you're a speaker, I recommend next week when I release a podcast with Michael McQueen, who's pretty much the top keynote speaker in Australia, is have a listen to how he built credibility as a 22-year-old when he's talking about future trends in the world of leadership. It's a really fascinating approach. So Sheriff, presenting facts clearly without too much detail. IT, Christy, great. Being succinct, knowing their mindset and personally, excellent. Okay, some great things. Keep them going. Awesome. I like those. There's some really good comments in the chat. But our aim when it comes to dealing with the key decision makers, dealing with those C-suite, is the following two things. These are the two things that we must deliver every single time. First, we need to be able to build trust and then reduce uncertainty. These two are the two key things that you need to have in mind when you're preparing and the way you deliver your presentation. Now, when it comes to these two areas, there's a couple of key things. One is we need to do connection before content. So we need to be able to connect with people before we share the content. Now, you can't spend 10 minutes sharing a story about how you got to work that day, but build a connection with them that can be really short. It may only be one sentence about something where you have something in common, or from a previous conversation, it might be, how did your kids' rehearsal go for school? How did your golf game go? What is that connection you have with them that you're aware of or that you can research and find out? But then you've also got clarity and being succinct in our content, right? So clarity, saying more with less, being really succinct, removing those filler words, knowing exactly what you're going to say, and then also how we deliver it. And I want you to understand this. The influence and impact we have over a decision maker is 20% content and 80% methodology. Now, you're probably sitting there, some of you going, well, content's really important. What I say is really important. And yes, it is. You must have important, clear, and succinct things that you're going to say, and you must have the research and do your work. But the influence and impact we have on decision makers is 80% through the methodology. Now, what is methodology? That is our nonverbal cues, our gestures that we have, our tonality, the way we interact with them. It could even be our first impression as we walk in the door. Do we have great posture? Are we breathing well? They have massive, massive impact and influence in regards to the decision-making process. So let's have a look. And look, today we're going to focus on the content side. We're going to focus only on strategy and content because we've only got 25 minutes together. So we're going to start with here looking at the psychology of C-suite. So I'm going to take you through the psychology of C-suite here. And this here is, sort of the 5 sort of key areas that we find that we need to understand or try and get a grasp of or relate our presentation to help us get that buy-in, to build that trust, be a trusted advisor, reduce the uncertainty of them. And so these are really important. So have a look at these. I'm going to take you through, and then at the end, I'll share the whole screen. So if you want to take a screenshot at the end of everything, you can. It's going to build out here. Okay, so the first one here is importance. So we need to be able to position whatever we're presenting as a level of importance to that C-suite. How can we raise the stakes of it and make it feel like it is important to the organization and important to that CEO or that C-suite person? So it's got to be relevant, needs to be a high level of importance. So think about what is important right now for the organization. How can I match it to that? The second component is vision. Okay, how are we attaching it to the vision of the C-suite and the organization or even an industry or the client that you're dealing with? And then performance. The third part here is performance. And we're going to go through this. Now, I'm going to share 5 areas that I find are pretty common with, say, a CEO. So we're going to focus more on a CEO. And what are they measured on? What is their performance measured on? And they're measured by the board. Okay, if they're a chief marketing officer, chief HR officer, their performance is going to be measured by the CEO. So we're going to focus on CEO here. They've been measured by the board. And you'll get the picture. The first part here is strategy. So how they're going to be based on how well they can deliver and implement the strategy that they have agreed on. So how can you align it to one of the core strategies or key strategies for that year or that time frame or over a couple of years? How does it enhance and improve the productivity and the effectiveness of the team, the performance of the team. So how can you align your initiative or what you're sharing to that component? Compliance, a number of companies where compliance is really strong, like you're dealing with legal, you might be dealing with IT companies, you might be dealing with finance companies where there's a lot more regulatoriness about them. How does it align to supporting compliance from a regulation perspective? How does what you're presenting support the implementation of key strategies? All right, so think about that. And then the fifth one that they generally get measured on is budget. So how can you support them from a budget perspective? And this is a challenge because sometimes we want more budget. But times we've got to be able to position why this is more important in the budget than something else. If you need more money, or you go, look, we can save money here, which is going to free up money for this space. So be really strategic. Now, you don't need all 5, but see if you can align to one of these or 2 of these if possible. Now, if we go to the next one, we're looking at decisions. How does C-suite make decisions? Now, we don't always know this information. So part of our discovery, even when you're in that room, sometimes you'll ask questions, is to try and find out more and more information and keep this on board. You need to understand the psychology of the person you're dealing with. How do they make decisions? Okay, so here are 5 key areas that they generally can make decisions on, and people will be one of these, sometimes maybe 2 of these. They won't be all 5. Okay, so some of them want you to focus more on a macro vision perspective, and they will make decisions based on how does it serve the vision from a big picture point of view. Others want a lot more detail. And so for them, you might prepare a package beforehand so they can read, or you might have a bit more detail in your slides and you need to focus on that. Whereas others, you might need to stay at the macro. They just want to know, what is the macro outcome going to be for the organization or for our company if they're buying your services or products? Credible, some want lots of credible sources. They want research, they want evidence, they want case studies, they want client experiences. They want lots of credibility. Some will be really risk adverse. Some will have a great risk appetite and they'll be willing to take lots of risks. So what is their risk appetite and understanding that? The 5th one is really tricky. Some, you'll find this, and I've had to deal with this before, is where people, the C-suite person wants to make it their idea. So the decision, it needs to be their idea. And so it's a bit too hard to explain it right now. We do this in the program, a proper program with the company here, but it is unpacking how you can turn something that you might be sharing as an idea into their idea. The 5th component of our psychology is C-suite, trust. How can you become the trusted advisor? And you know when you've got to this level, when they reach out to you for information, not only in your area, but other areas. That's when you know you've got their ear and you've got their trust. All right. Oh, sorry. I'll come back one more. I'm going to share that full screen. And so you can catch those detail components. There we go. So if you want to capture that screenshot, go ahead. Beautiful. Now we're going to dive now into strategy and a lot more of the content. So we're focused more just then a lot around the C-suite, the psychology. My encouragement to you, and I do this every single time before I have a meeting, I build an avatar of them. Okay, so a profile of that C-suite. I will write down as many things as I possibly can about what they like, what they don't like, if I know their decision-making style, if I can remember things that they've told me in the past that I can connect with, what can I research on their LinkedIn? What else can I find maybe on the company website? What is happening in their space? What car do they drive? What type of sports do they play? I need to know everything because we need to go beyond the transaction of working with someone to actually go into the relationship. And that's where you really build that connection and the ability to influence long-term. So we need to know first, write that profile down. Then we need to create our desired outcomes. And when it comes to outcomes, there's 2 key components that you need to consider from your presentation. First one is your audience. So who is in the room? What do they want, right? So have a think about what would they want from you. But then also, what do you want them to think, feel, or do at the end? What is that one thing you want to think, feel, or do? And this will help you shape the key messages and the content and the way you deliver it. Okay, so that's really important. Then for you, maybe it's an inspire further conversation. It might be getting the next meeting. If you deal in government space, champion your policy advice. Whatever it may be, what is that key thing that you want to get out of this presentation? So that's really, really important. Okay, who would like to play a game? I've talked for a bit here. Who would like to play a game? Excellent. Okay, I saw a couple of raised eyebrows. We're gonna play what we call the thinking game. Now, this requires very little thinking. So whatever comes to mind first is the right answer. And I need you to write these down quickly. And it is you're gonna please note that you will think in all four of these areas, but I want you to go, what is my default? So what is my natural, go-to when it comes to thinking? Okay, so first of all, are you more big picture, macro thinking, or are you more into the detail, analytical point of view? So just in front of you, write a B or a D. And then I want you to write down, are you more analytical or are you more visual? So do you like the numbers and the data, or do you more like to see what it looks like? Okay, so write down an A or V. Now I want you to work out which number you are according to the quadrant. So if you're analytical, big picture would be number 1, big picture visual number 2, etc. Write that in the chat. Which number are you? 1, 2, 3, or 4? All right, we got some 2s. Wow, we got a lot of 2s in this. Big picture visual people today. And we've got some 1, 3, 2s. Excellent. Okay, so what we'll find in any room is in most cases you'll see a spread. Today we've got a lot more 2s, but in most cases it will be 25% in each area, and it doesn't matter which group. Like some people think, I'm going to deal with finance people. They're going to be all analytical and detail. They'll be all 4s. Oh, no, they're not. They'll be all spread. And you generally don't know which quadrant people sit in. Therefore, you need to present to all 4. You must present to all 4. And so the problem is most people will present in their default, and it gets them in trouble because only 25% of the time they hit the mark. And 75%, they got people who are twiddling their thumbs, they're on their phones, they're distracted, they're thinking about what am I having for lunch? What do I need to buy my kid for their birthday, etc. So we need to hold their attention. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you shortly a structure that has all those 4 components to it when you present. But first of all, I need you to realize that when you're presenting a new change initiative, a new solution, a new product, you're trying to get people to buy into something, we are talking about change. You're change management 101. All of you are change managers. When you if you're coaching someone or you're managing someone, you're a change manager. If you're providing new products and services, you're a change manager. New ideas, you're looking for change. So what are the keys to change? So let's have a look at these, because we hear lots of people talk about what is important for change. But for me, here are the 3 key ones. And one of them, generally one of them is missed out a lot. First one is clarity of change. Absolute clarity of what the new idea, what the new product is, what is that new change going to look like? Clear, succinct, straight to the point. So that's number 1. Number 2, sense of urgency. You might have the best idea in the world, but unless it solves a pain point or problem for the C-suite, they don't care. Unless it's going to help the organization, they don't care. And it must be a real sense of urgency. Okay, COVID, just think about what we're doing now. We're online on Zoom. Before COVID, we had this technology since, I think the first video conferencing was in the 80s. I was using it at the end of the 90s. And regularly from then onwards. But it's only just become great because we had a sense of urgency. And so COVID did a great thing for online communication. So sense of urgency. But the third part is visualizing the change. People forget this part. If you think about, you got a little kid, a 3-year-old, you've either seen this or you've had a 3-year-old or have a 3-year-old, and they do something and you go, well, that's a bit naughty, you shouldn't do that again. And they come up and you try and tell them how to do it differently. They look at you and go, yes, 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 and then they run off and do the same thing. Why? Because they haven't been able to visualize what it looks like. So your job is to visualize the change. Same with adults. And we use that through story. Okay, so that's change management 101. We need to understand that first. Now, next level influence, we need to clearly articulate the problem and the solution better than they can. The best consultants in the world, the ones who charge the most, can always articulate the problem and solution better than their client. And so you need to be able to do that with your C-suite as well and the people you're influencing. So let's have a look at a presentation structure. I'm going to go through pretty quick on this because we don't have time to go into detail, but you will catch the macro. First, we start with a problem. As I said before, we don't care about your idea unless it solves a problem or pain point for ourselves or the organization. So we need to articulate the problem first. Then we can share the solution. The solution before the problem doesn't work. You don't have permission yet. You have to connect, make it relevant to the listener. Then you need to share a bit of evidence. Okay, so yes, you've got a great idea. It's a problem. Prove it. Prove it to me that it works. So it could be some research, some data that you have. It could even be surveys. It could be some client case studies. Then you share an example. This is where story comes into play. And it could be the personal experience story, could be a client story, could even be a visualization. Imagine if what's possible in the future. And then you can share the detail. So for most of you, when you're presenting to C-suite, the first four, the problem, solution, evidence, example, you'll do in the first 3 to 5 minutes. Then the detail is the long part. That's when you share the 3 benefits, the 3 ways, the 3 things that have happened, whatever it may be. All right, so I'm just going to put up a little bit of information there. You can take a screenshot afterwards. But when we looked at that thinking game, the problem solution, that's the big picture. The evidence is the analytical. The example is your visual, and your detail is your detail. So now you've covered all 4 thinking styles. Brilliant. Now you capture everyone in the room by incorporating this. Now, depending on the thinking, the way they make decisions or the way they like information, you may need to spend more time in different parts if you know about the key person that you're delivering to. All right, capture a screenshot of that. We're going fast today. But, if you work for an organization, etc., or you want to develop this more, then we'll talk about a program now. So when we talk about presenting to C-suite, when we deal with companies, bespoke programs, or we go on and do presenting to C-suite programs, our program journey is from taking your employees from someone who just speaks to a person of influence. That's the key. Anyone can talk, but to be able to influence someone to make a decision, we've got to shift that dial to teach you how to do that. And the key components of that program are strategy, which we've talked about, content and structure. We talked about the C-suite insights that went through here, but there are other parts like first impressions, non-verbals, really going deep into story, how to unpack that and deliver that well, confidence and certainty, and then how to deal with those challenging questions that we get thrown in those presentations. Sometimes we think about all the presentation about what we're going to deliver and we forget we're going to get asked questions. So we talk about how we can navigate that. So if presenting to C-suite is a program that you would like in your organization or you feel could be valuable in your organization, please reach out to us or introduce us to your HR learning development person and we can have a conversation. For those who aren't in that situation, I hope you got a lot of benefit out of today. If you're looking at it from an individual, also let us know by contacting us, because we do have our parent company Speakers Institute that can talk about how to train you as an individual in your ability to communicate and present. So we can give you that option. But thank you very much for joining us today. Remember, when you present to C-suite, it's all about building trust and reducing uncertainty. If you don't take away anything else, remember that. Build trust, reduce uncertainty.